No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and sharing. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're spending a few moments in Underground USA. The dystopian nature of the times we live in just keeps getting darker and darker, or at least the prospects of what can happen to our nation and to the world do if the American people don't wake up. The latest "let's see how transparent I can make my Marxism" move from Kamala Harris is to proudly stand up for the Marxist concept of price controls. This new policy, rolled out at a carefully choreographed campaign rally, was even excoriated by, of all outlets, the "let's run interference for the left" Washington Post, where, paraphrasing their laughable tagline, "Democracy goes to die." In the piece, Catherine Rampell sounds as if she actually paid attention in her Econ 101 class.
It's hard to exaggerate how bad this policy is. It is, in all but name, a sweeping set of government-enforced price controls across every industry, not only food. Supply and demand would no longer determine prices or profit levels. Far-off Washington bureaucrats would. The FTC would be able to tell, say, a Kroger in Ohio the acceptable price it can charge for milk. At best, this would lead to shortages, black markets, and hoarding, among other distortions seen previous times countries tried to limit price growth by fiat. There's a reason narrower price gouging laws that exist in some U.S. states are rarely invoked. At worst, it might accidentally raise prices.
Government-mandated price controls are based on Marxism because they involve the state, the government, intervening in the market to set prices and allocate resources, a key tenet of Marxism. In a free market economy, such that we're supposed to have in the United States, prices are determined by the forces of supply and demand, and the government doesn't interfere with this process. However, in a Marxist system, the government plays a central role in determining prices and resource allocation, apparently a concept that is lost on the far-left rank and file. Now, I say rank and file because I'm certain that the puppet masters of the far left understand the concept completely. After all, they're Marxists. The ramifications of establishing government-mandated price controls are not only significant, they should also be terrifying to anyone who wants to have free choice in their lives, another concept the far-left rank and file finds confusing. One major consequence is that government-mandated price controls always lead to shortages. When the government sets prices below market equilibrium, demand exceeds supply, leading to shortages. One need only recall the dismal economy of the former Soviet Union or Venezuela today, where there were routinely lines for staples like bread, milk, and meat. Russia's solution in the post-Soviet world was to embrace a hybrid capitalism and allow the free market to exist. This is not unlike what China's economy morphed into when the World Trade Organization stupidly allowed the Communist Chinese Party to enter into the organization. Another dangerous consequence of government-mandated price controls is that they facilitate black markets. When legal prices are set too high, people turn to illegal markets to purchase goods at lower, more market-driven prices. This always leads to criminal activity. The reality of the vicious Russian syndicate serves as indisputable proof of what a black market can spawn. These black markets also deny legitimate tax revenue to the government, which one can argue might be a good thing with the way they spend today in Washington, D.C. Furthermore, price controls discourage innovation and investment. When prices are artificially low, businesses have less incentive to invest in new technologies and production methods that increase efficiency and reduce costs. This leads to stagnation in the economy, a decline in overall economic growth, and mediocrity. As Dr. Robert Malone wrote in his Substack, and I paraphrase, "It just might be that corporate America, including Amazon's owner Jeff Bezos, who also happens to own the Washington Post, from which the article came, it just might be possible that the elite just woke up to what a Harris presidency might look like." Of course, to a dyed-in-the-wool Marxist, all of these things are acceptable and, frankly, preferable to the capitalist system because in a Marxist system, the prices are not only set by the government, but the means of production are owned by the government. And that means the government sets salaries too. They control you. Now, are you starting to get why the Marxist puppet masters don't want Kamala Harris and her equally as leftist stooge Tim Walz in front of the cameras? The more she articulates her belief system, once she gets past the word salad, the more she exposes herself as a far-left San Francisco Bay neo-Marxist masquerading as a Democrat. And Obama 2.0 can't have her or anyone else not sticking to the script so they can achieve Obama 3.0, which is what we'll get if Kamala Harris wins.
And, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
When we come back, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally from our flagship station, WGUL, AM 860 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida.
You're listening to Underground USA.
State Farm says they're a good neighbor. But would a good neighbor target 5-year-olds for conversations about sexual identity? State Farm did. For 6 months, they asked employees to donate guides to being transgender to public schools. Books aimed at making kindergartners question their identity. How do parents know where State Farm put these books? What's State Farm doing about it? Visit AskStateFarmWhy.com.
Who helped cause soaring gas prices? BlackRock. Who contributed to outrageous housing prices? BlackRock. BlackRock and Larry Fink spent years harassing oil and gas companies, making them divest from fossil fuels. Now you feel the pain. And BlackRock-owned companies are snatching up houses, crippling families. Now BlackRock's former ESG czar, Brian Deese, is Biden's economic advisor, crushing America from within. That's what BlackRock is really about.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
Here we are. I can't believe, Frank, this week has really just really flown by. We've got a lot of stuff happening, but today on Friday, Kamala Harris is supposed to at least give us the first glimpse of some kind of policy. This one having to do with the economy, and a lot of it sounds like price controls.
Well, that's the Marxist way, is price controls. It's never worked. It's always ended up with massive job losses and supply chain issues. Historically, whenever any government has imposed price controls, look at Venezuela. But I don't think people are going to care. Okay, her base isn't going to care. Trump's base isn't going to care. It's all going to be a battle of rhetoric because the Harris base is going to vote for her. She could sacrifice babies on national television, and Kamala's base would say, "Did you see how perfectly she sacrificed those babies?" And the Trump people are going to say, well, she's been sacrificing babies for 3.5 years. What's different? I don't think that unveiling policies at this point for Kamala Harris is a strong suit, because you've got a very evenly divided electorate. You have to go for the people in the middle, and saying price controls, that's not going to work. That's not an answer to the problem. More government isn't the answer to the problem, and the people in the middle have been suffering under a weight of more government for 3.5 years. Make that 11.5 years if you want to count the Obama years, because this is Obama 2.0. And then with the Kamala Harris regime, that would be Obama 3.0, because the same people are going to be running the show.
Yeah.
So she can roll out all the policies she wants. We already know the result. The media is going to say it's fantastic. People who are actually awake, not woke, will say that's Marxism. So the battle continues for the people in the middle.
Well, you're exactly right. It's a small group of people comparatively. But, one of the parts of this, Frank, is the idea that they're going to hit on this corporate greed. And a lot of that, to me, is very much, Soviet style, Marxist style. These companies, they're all exploiting the consumer, and on it goes. When, it's not just corporations that have to raise prices on things, but it's the mom and pop store down the street or the mom and pop restaurant. Nobody is escaping out of this inflation.
Yeah, and the regulations they would put into place would come down the hardest on the mom and pop shops, because the major corporations can handle them. The second that he talks that she talks about corporate greed, Trump has to come out with, yes, there is a little bit of that out there in the marketplace, but that's what capitalism is about. You want to talk about things that we shouldn't be doing as a corporate society here in the entirety of the West, and that's outsourcing to countries like China, who have nothing but bad intentions towards the West. They want to dominate and eventually rule the West. They're not unlike Islamofascists that way. There's a great documentary. It's long, but there's a great documentary by Epoch Times called The Final War that everybody should watch if you want to see the totality of what the Communist Chinese Party is all about. Mm-hmm. And it centers on this. They look for ins into our corporations through people who are trying to maximize profit, and they exploit that. So there does have to be some morality, but we don't have corporate greed. They'll scream lovely things about how wonderful your 401k is doing, and then they want to talk about corporate greed. Well, which one is it? Because your 401k is predicated on corporations doing well. The stock market is predicated on corporations doing well. They do that by making a profit.
Oh, sure.
So the Janus face here is quite hypocritical.
Well, and of course it really tries to, sort of gin up, I hate to call it, class envy or, this kind of thing. It's kind of when, Barack Obama used to talk about the Wall Street fat cats and how they were, doing their, they were all so bad and so forth. It generates these bad feelings and almost like a class warfare type of strategy.
Listen, Kyle, and this has got to be the common sense bottom line. If they're going to rail against corporate America, then stop taking campaign donations from corporate America.
Love it. I want to ask you a little bit about what's going on over there at undergroundusa.com. But first, I also have a question for you, and that is, will Kamala Harris ever do a press conference? Donald Trump just did another one from Bedminster, and he can just call a press conference just like that. It looks like it's not hard to do as much as Kamala Harris might want us to think it is.
It's hard for Kamala Harris to do because she falls into word salad when she gets pressured. And that's the one thing that they don't want to have her do, is provide more sound bites for not only the Trump campaign, but for people who don't want to see her elected. Yeah, that doesn't include the mainstream media. But right now, the problem for her campaign is that people are engaged, and social media has changed the game. When Kamala Harris does something that ends up being termed a word salad, it explodes on social media. And that ends up touching the people that the mainstream media can't touch. You know, people who aren't watching MSNBC or CNN or ABC or CBS, you know, they don't hear the pro-Kamala stuff that is being vomited onto the airwaves. But people do go on social media, and when they see small clips every day of Kamala Harris's brand new word salad mixture, you know, that reinforces the Kamala Harris is an idiot narrative that you know, that hurts her campaign. So they don't want her in the public eye. So, you know, when will she do one? After they get finished beating the word salad out of her, because I guarantee you that's what they're doing right now. Every waking moment is training her not to do word salad, is to be triggered by certain words in a question that will evoke a canned response that you'll hear over and over and over again, but which can't be classified as word salad.
Yeah, it's literally the programming of Kamala Harris.
Absolutely, and that's why she's been out of the public eye, because she can't get over the word salad yet. She will come out once she's got these canned answers under control. You won't be able to get her off the air, because the mainstream media they're starving for an interview with Time Magazine's Kamala Harris. It's her moment.
You're right. It's the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, so once she gets her word vomit under control, and she's drilled on the talking points that they want her to use, it'll be Kamala Harris 24/7 on all of those flamethrower networks. So maybe we shouldn't be asking that question so much.
Well, you know, part of this thing too, you know, I know that they didn't want Biden to go out and do a debate, because they knew. Obviously, they knew what was happening to him, and the huge likelihood that he would do so terribly in a debate. But I guess in the end, they thought, well, we better do something to try to shore this up. Or they thought, I mean, on the other hand, it could have been, we'll send him out there and we'll start this process of getting him off the ticket. One of those two things. But at some point, they've got to send Kamala Harris out there to talk to somebody.
No. I mean, they really don't have to. If they can keep her in the basement the entire time and let the media run with her campaign for her, then they literally have a better chance of winning.
No, I agree with you there. In fact, but you've got, you know, for example, Charlemagne the God, you know, the radio host, he's starting to say, hey, Donald Trump is everywhere, basically. I'm just paraphrasing him, but he did use the word everywhere. Donald Trump is everywhere, and Kamala Harris needs to do more interviews. So, I mean, at some point, does it start backfiring on the Harris campaign? Because you're going to have certain groups of voters who are going to say this isn't happening, or are they just going to stay committed?
Well, her voters will stay committed because they hate Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The idea of keeping her out of the public eye is not so much, you know, it's a lot about the word salad thing, but that's not the total game plan. The total game plan is to let Trump keep talking.
Yeah, and the hope that he says something weird or stupid.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're betting on, if she stays silent, two things happen. Trump gets more out of control because he's goading her into being out there. And two, you don't get to know Kamala Harris but for what the press is saying about her. And right now they love her. So, okay, we lose Charlemagne the God. Looking at the numbers, would rather have everybody that's listening to MSNBC, CNN, and the major networks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this all comes down to the strategy that the campaign has pivoted towards under the guidance of David Plouffe. That was the biggest thing that's happened to this campaign so far, for a couple different reasons.
Well, exactly right. And, one of these things, too, about, Kamala Harris, being out of the spotlight, I wonder sometimes, Frank, she's going to be the nominee, and maybe she just has no control over this, or could she actually say, I want to go out and talk to people, or is that verboten for her?
It's verboten for her because she was selected by the Politburo, and she will follow orders or they'll get rid of her at the convention.
See, that's significant because, Donald Trump is someone who's actually going to be a leader and has been a leader. He's the person you think is a president. Joe Biden has gone through the same thing of he can't go out and do what he would ever want to do, even assuming he wasn't in a terrible decline, because there seem to be these handlers. And that's where I think, any intrepid reporter you'd think would want to really delve into this story, because the American people don't want a figurehead. They actually want an actual president.
We don't have intrepid reporters anymore.
Yeah.
We don't have journalists anymore. We have news personalities. And that when that came onto the scene, we lost journalism and honest news across the board. Everybody's a star now if you're on television news. People want to get an autograph from somebody who's on television news. Well, that's ridiculous. Just report what's happening. That's what your job is. It's not to be a star. It's not to get your baloney cut into stars and have the green M&Ms removed in the green room. Right. Knock it off. And you're right. Kamala Harris, when I say Obama 3.0, if you needed any more evidence at all that Obama's been running the show, you need to look at the regime change that happened at the top of the Kamala Harris presidential campaign with David Plouffe. He brought in his entire team from 2 elections. So who's calling the shots? It ain't Kamala Harris.
Right. Yeah, I've often said that, as you said, I think quite rightly so, this notion of the Politburo, they're going with this model that they loved with Biden, and they've transferred it now to Kamala Harris. It's the figurehead model where you're just kind of ceremonial, and you're the front facing person in this, but you have no real say. It's kind of like that movie Dave when they were manipulating the doppelganger, telling him, you say this, you say that, and they thought they could get away with it.
It is exactly what they did when they selected AOC.
Mm-hmm.
This group of people decided who they were going to run, and she took marching orders from the group of people that selected her at the cattle call. That's what Kamala Harris is. She's a magnified AOC, and just as radical.
Kamala Harris has said so many things over time that it's hard to believe. But, when you were talking earlier in the last segment, it was reminding me that we had this MRC poll that we mentioned on the program yesterday that shows this vast majority, like 75% essentially, of the people out there aren't aware of Kamala Harris's radical positions. And I thought that was incredibly illuminating. It also means that we got our work cut out for us.
Well, and that's the meat of the point that I made earlier, which is that she doesn't have to come out and say anything. She really doesn't. She could win this election by staying in the basement because the media is running with their narrative of who Kamala Harris is. And that's why, and I said this, last week or earlier in the week when we talked on Monday, that the Trump campaign must pivot or include a pivot into its strategy to make sure that people know who Kamala Harris is, exposing and illuminating her record, but also make sure that they make that and her record and her personality and her policies and everything else part of this effort to push back against the Marxist machine. He's got to run against Obama 2.0 as well. If he doesn't do that, then it becomes this battle of personalities. He's got to make it about ideology. Do you want massive government in your life? Look what it did to your health care. Look what it's doing to your 401k. Look what it did to energy prices and grocery prices. Look what it did when it comes to peace around the world. Do you really want this centralized government in your life telling you everything that you have to do and must believe? Or do you want to go back to a time when you had the freedom to actually choose things? He needs to get into that meat and potatoes here. It can't just be cackling Kamala, because if it is, there's a real good chance he loses.
No, I hear you completely, and I do. I was a little concerned when at the press conference he said, "Well, I have I can go ahead with these personal attacks and so forth." And I know what he's thinking. Trump is thinking that, this is part of my brand. It's part of what kind of got me to where I am right now. But seems to be reverberating about the policy. And, there's, J.D. Vance is there in order to go after the nominee on the Democrat side. That's what your vice president nominee usually does. There's other people in the media and so forth that are going to be talking about Kamala Harris. But Trump does seem to be trying to take a little bit of that tack of comparing policy.
Well, he's got to do it more.
Yeah.
I know he doesn't like to be told what he needs to do, and he gets kind of defiant and digs in his heels when you tell him, please don't do this. But, Donald, please don't do this. It's for the country. It can't be about anything else. You keep telling the crowds that it's about saving the country. It's about making America great again. Yeah, that is, you drill that home. That's an excellent thing to drill home. But you've got to stop with the ad hominem attacks, because it doesn't win the people in the middle where you need to perform. That's right. Where the election is. Your base is never going to leave you. Her base is never going to leave her. You've got to get the people who are undecided or unaware. And that means pounding home her record and showing that going forward, past actions prove that she will do this, which means this for you. You need to talk very plainly and very common sense to the people in the middle, because all they understand really is the pocketbook. So show them how she hurts the pocketbook.
Yeah, she really does. Yeah.
Yeah. Show them how it hurts their children and their grandchildren. Names don't hurt people's grandchildren. That will be over with and in the history books before their grandchildren even vote. But you start talking about prosperity not being able to recover by the time their grandchildren are adults, now things start ringing true. Mm-hmm. So the pivot must happen. The name calling must stop. No, he cannot keep going with that. It's a bad strategy. He's been president of the United States already. He's got to act presidential now.
Well said. Well said. I tell you what, do you feel like taking a quick telephone call, Frank?
Sure.
All right, here we go. We got Fred in St. Pete this morning. Good morning, Fred. You're on with Frank Salvato.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I was wondering, do you think Trump should mention the fact that a lot of people think Obama is still running the show?
Absolutely, without question.
Yeah, okay.
But he's got to do it naming names. He's got to talk about Powers being in there. He's got to talk about Susan Rice being in there. He's got to talk about David Plouffe running the campaign now, coming in and running her campaign. He was the campaign manager for both of Obama's terms, both elections. So that's significant.
Wouldn't he be running the risk of people that still love Obama?
The people who love Obama are going to vote for Harris anyway. They hate Trump.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Sure.
Yeah, it's built in. I think it's built in.
That's in the mix. Okay. And plus, I think Obama's policies were good.
I wish he would do that. That would really be cool. I'd love to hear that. All right. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Fred. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Take care. Fred in St. Pete, everybody. And yeah, I think, Frank, this is the thing. Yeah, you got people who are going to be in the tank anyway for anything Obama, but there are a lot of people who say to themselves, again, this isn't, none of what's happening is normal in this presidential election for the Democrats.
Listen, what is absolutely fair game at this point in time, because Obama 2.0 has been running the show for the last 3.5 years, is to make all the bad things from the Obama years, make her own them.
Yep.
Make her own them, along with all of her own incredibly Marxist San Francisco Bay political values that she holds, because that's what she is. She's a San Francisco Bay politician in the same ilk as Nancy Pelosi. Make her own everything that's been propping her up. There's a lot of bad stuff there. When people hear about it, they don't like her. And now that she's flip-flopping, you could say she will say anything to get elected.
And that is the absolute truth. That's exactly right.
If you like the podcast, please rate it and comment if your platform lets you. Go over to undergroundusa.com and subscribe to the Substack, and pick up your copy of Nullification, available on Amazon. But more importantly, talk to your friends, family, colleagues, and acquaintances about politics and religion. Do it calmly and employ facts over emotion. You'll be surprised how much you have in common with a great many of those you talk to. It's something we can all do to preserve the Republic. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're listening to Underground USA.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. My main focus was to be the best I could be on the basketball court. The first inkling that something was wrong was I started to notice that I couldn't do things without losing my breath. I still didn't think that it was anything serious until I couldn't make it to the airport. Every 20 or 30 yards, I had to sit down and get my breath. Every physical exertion seemed to exhaust me. I knew something was wrong, and then I went to a baseball game with some friends, and I couldn't deal with any exertion. And finally, I went from the baseball game to the hospital where I was diagnosed with AFib. When I first noticed symptoms, I should have gone to the doctor and told him what was happening. Instead, I tried to let it pass. It took me listening to the cardiologist to help me get it straight as to what I needed to do. AFib increases the risk of stroke about 5 times. So you need to go and find out what's happening. You need to know all of it, and you need to deal with it. It took me a while before I got wise. The No Time to Wait campaign expresses the urgency that people need to find out if they have AFib. I want my experience to help others understand the symptoms of atrial fibrillation. I didn't pay attention to my symptoms, which kept coming and going, or discuss them with my doctor. Experiencing irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, or any other AFib symptoms, including shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness, you should talk to your doctor. When it comes to your health, this is no time to wait.